What's up guys, Vince Blaze here with Adventure Tennis. Hope you guys are doing well. We are back here again for our late night session. It is currently almost 9:30 p.m. I don't know why I was looking here, I don't have a watch, but it's currently 9:30 p.m. Beautiful evening, there's no wind, but unfortunately we're filled with mosquitoes. Bob is dying behind the camera right now. That being said, we are super excited today because we are reviewing the Blade 98 V9. So this is a super popular racket. Obviously pretty popular on the tour with the pros, but also just overall, a lot of people really enjoy this racket. Wilson is obviously a really established brand, one of the OG brands of tennis and a lot of sports. And so it does have quite a reputation. And so a little bit of pressure reviewing this racket. Huge shout out to Do It Tennis who did send it to us for review. Now, I was really skeptical going into this review because as some of you might know, the previous version, the V8, it just really didn't fit my game. I felt like it wasn't stable. I felt like I didn't connect with it. I felt like the ball was just going all over the place. And overall, it just didn't really suit my game. At the time, I required a lot more power and stability through my shots. I didn't have the best technique. I still don't have the best technique. But that being said, I feel like this version overall complements my play style considerably better than the previous version. Now, it is a 98 square inch racket, so it's obviously aimed for more control, more precision style of play. It's suited for a little bit more of an aggressive play style. And honestly, I wasn't expecting much out of this racket. As I mentioned, I really didn't like the previous version. But ever since playing with it, I think I really enjoy it and I really think that it suits my game style. But that being said, without further ado, let's get right into the review. All right, so overall, I surprisingly really enjoyed this racket. If you guys have been following us for a while, some of you guys might know that I have tried and I've purchased the version 8, number 8 of this racket, mainly because I love the color. It was an amazing colorway, I thought. But as soon as I started playing with it, I felt like it just wasn't a racket for me. I didn't feel like I had a lot of stability on the racket, and that was the main concern. I felt like whenever I was connecting with the ball, I felt like my racket was falling out of my hands, etc. And at the time, my game required a little bit more stability due to probably poor technique and also a little bit more power. And so the E-Zone really fit that game. It was also very forgiving on my backhand. And so when we were sent this racket by Do It Tennis, shout out to Do It Tennis for sending us this racket for review. But when we were sent this racket, I can't really say that I was really excited about it. I was just like, oh no, here we go again. Another Blade, which I didn't really enjoy last time. But overall, I think that this honestly has been quite surprising. I feel like since probably due to the fact that my game and my technique overall has probably improved considerably over the last year, I'm really able to commit through my strokes, forehand, backhand. My backhand's a lot more consistent now. And so I feel like I'm getting a lot more out of this racket. There are some considerable differences between the V8 and the V9 versions. There's a considerable difference in feel. I definitely feel like this racket is a lot more stable. I feel like it's a lot more maneuverable, and I also feel like it's a lot more forgiving than the V8 iteration of this racket. In terms of spin, I feel like this racket does have decent amount of spin. It is a 98 square inch head size, and so it's not meant for spin, it's meant for more precision. That being said, on the serve, I did get a decent amount of kick. I feel like you get a little bit of a shorter, sort of more aggressive spin. So for example, on the volleys, you can really, due to the racket head speed that you can generate, you can really get like a really quick spin, backspin on the ball. But it's not something that you're getting like huge spin to keep it into the court. It's not like a Rafa type of pure aero type of racket. It's definitely meant for more aggressive play styles. If you're trying to get like a really flat slice right above the net, you know, those Roger Federer slices that you're seeing really beautifully, those Tiafoe's type of slices, I feel like you can really get that with this racket. But it's more of like a quick, short spin rather than like a big loopy spin. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if there's a term for it, but that's sort of my take on it in terms of spin. The only time I really saw some decent spin was on the kick serve. Because it is super maneuverable, you can swing through at a relatively high speed, generating a lot more spin on it. I do recommend that you change and tinker around a little bit more with the contact point and the angle that you're hitting. I did have to adjust compared to my E-Zone. Overall, not the spinniest racket, but also I wouldn't say that it's not a spin-friendly racket either. Now, when it comes to control, this is definitely where this racket shines. I feel like before I played with this racket, I didn't actually understand too much of what people meant when they were talking about control in the racket. I feel like every racket was just like, yeah, you just hit it, and the better you are at hitting it and the better you are at, hitting the sweet spot and hitting the right angle, you're getting good control. But I think I'm understanding a little bit more what control means, and when you have a thinner beam, you don't have as much stability, but you are getting more precision because you're feeling a little bit more in your hand. So everything feels a little bit more exaggerated. So you're gonna feel a little bit more impact on your hand. That being said, when you are hitting and committing through the ball and hitting well, you are able to control and dictate with more precision, with a little bit more confidence, I'd say, knowing that you're gonna be able to direct the ball without it going out of the court, without it going too much to the right, too much to the left. It's really something where I feel like you could sort of like look at where on the court you wanted to place it, and really you have a lot more of a wider scale. You could really dial in aiming smaller targets rather than just bigger targets. Obviously, when you're on the defensive, when you're returning a ball, or you're just trying to give yourself a little bit more time, and that's whole strategy game, go for bigger targets. But I felt like if you are in an aggressive position, you can really dial it in and really pinpoint where you want to be aiming the ball at, and it's super rewarding. But I will say that as soon as your technique drops, you are going to be facing a lot of issues with this, so you really have to stay on the ball, you have to stay focused and really commit to the shots. Now, this is definitely not the most powerful racket out there. I do feel that due to its maneuverability and the racket head speed that you can generate due to a little bit more of a lighter weight compared to, for example, an E-Zone or a Pure Aero, because the weight is a little bit more on the handle side compared to a Pure Aero or E-Zone, I feel like the weight's a little bit more on the head side. The Aero is notorious for having weight on the neck, which allows for that spin potential. I feel like it's a lot more maneuverable, which gives it less power because it's not as heavy here, but more power due to racket head speed. So all the power you really have to generate out of your arm when it comes to technique, grounding yourself, getting your feet grounded solid, and then pushing through from the legs into the racket, all those mechanics are really gonna be important and crucial for you to be able to generate power. But if you do nail those and you get a really good contact and solid contact on it and a good follow through, you're gonna see that power and you're gonna feel it. You can really feel a sweet spot when you hit it. It's really rewarding. It's like nothing else I've ever felt. It is a lot smaller and more concentrated than other rackets, but just to recap, it's not necessarily the most powerful racket out there, but it doesn't mean that it's not powerful at all. You just have a lot more control, and you have to dictate the power a lot more from your arm rather than relying on the power from the racket. As I mentioned, this racket is an extremely maneuverable racket. It's very whippy. It's a 98. It's a lot lighter. I find it feels lighter than, for example, my E-Zone. I felt really sluggish going back to my E-Zone. This one's really whippy. It's great for the serve. As you guys know, I do play with a single-handed backhand, and I do require a lot of maneuverability. And I'm noticing that it's really rewarding switching from the E-Zone, where I still felt a little bit sluggish on the backhand. I didn't feel as restricted with my E-Zone as I did with the Pure Aero, but this one, it feels a lot more lighter. I feel like I can actually generate some spin off my backhand, which is pretty rare. It also allows me to react a lot quicker and get a good contact on my backhand because I'm a little bit slower transitioning from a ball that's going from my forehand to my backhand. And so overall, I really feel like this is a super maneuverable racket. It's probably one of its strongest assets, I would say. It is a thinner beam racket, so it's not necessarily the most stable racket. As long as you have a good solid technique and foundation and a good stroke and you're following through, I feel like you will feel more stable on contact. Because it's not as big of like 100 square inch, maybe it's just 2 inches, doesn't make that big of a deal, but I do feel like there's less wiggle room for it going up and down if you're not hitting center. There's not as much strain on your arm when you hit the ball slightly off center, you can feel a little bit more weight. I feel like because there's not as much weight on this side, you don't feel it as much. It was just very interesting. So I was very surprised. I wouldn't say it's the most stable racket. My E-Zone definitely feels like you can plow through it. For example, the Pure Aero Rafa Origin racket, I just swing at it, stable no matter where you hit it on the racket. I feel like if you really commit to the shot, it will reward you with more stability. It's also pretty forgiving when you hit it off the hoop or the rim or whatever. It's pretty forgiving, but overall, I'd say it's relatively stable for a control-oriented racket with a thinner beam. So I would highly recommend, if you are looking at this, do play test this before. because it's not meant for everyone. Right now, I'm considering switching into this racket, but tread with caution if you are considering getting this racket. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. I will end off by giving a huge shout out to Wilson. I think that they really nailed it on this racket. I think they fixed a lot of the issues and concerns I personally had with the previous version. Again, one note, if you are considering switching into this racket, please try to play test it before purchasing it. It's not suited for everyone. I would recommend it more so for intermediate to more advanced players. If you are looking to transition into a little bit more of an aggressive play style, you want a little bit more precision to be able to more accurately pick your spots on the court, this might be the racket for you. I do recommend it if that is what you're aiming for. Again, huge shout out to Do It Tennis who did send us this racket for review. If you guys are considering purchasing this racket, please do check out Do It Tennis. We'll leave the links down below. Other than that, stay tuned if you guys want to see more content. And yeah, your boy might be switching to this racket from the E-Zone. So if I do make the switch, we'll make a video about it. But that's it for the review. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to leave us a comment if you guys have any questions about the racket. We'll try to answer it as best as we can. Leave a thumbs up if you guys enjoyed it. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.